She's Caterina Villani, that we thank again for put all the incredible speakers together and to organize this day. So it's very nice to see all of people from different areas, from different departments to be here today. So I want to just make few words for those who still don't know who Caterina is. She's a colleague and a postdoctoral researcher at the Abstraction project here in the University of Bologna. She also studied in Bologna, and she did her PhD in cognitive science here, but she also did a research visit at the Freie University in Berlin. She brings a truly interdisciplinary perspective to their work. So she integrates psychology and linguistics together in a new way. And I think she also showed this by contributing to international projects like Recognize, an Erasmus Plus program. And she also explored in all their studies the intricate role of expertise in shaping legal and institutional concepts. So she delves into the question of how we understand and communicate abstract concepts, and she will talk about this in her talk, Abstractness and Specificity in Dialogue. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to our last speaker, Caterina Villani.
Kind introduction. And as all of us are starting with metaphors, I will do the same. So I think a common thread in the presentation that we heard today is that language is at its core a socially shared tool that enable us to create, exchange knowledge, connect with others. And as much as a toolbox, stacked different type of instrument, language keep us a rich assortment of words. And within this language toolbox, we can choose words that help us to describe very concrete things, like table, bottles, but also very abstract things like religion, creativity, art. But we can also be very specific when we are talking and say, for example, I heard a robin, to cite some previous talk, or I'm feeling an emotion, or I'm feeling very enthusiastic today. And we can say the similar idea at different level, more general. For example, by saying, I heard an animal, or I'm just feeling an emotion. So today in my talk, I'm going to focus on this two semantic dimension of language that are abstractness or concreteness and specificity. I will quickly go over the definition because this morning, they have been already introduced by other speakers, but and so maybe can feel a bit repetitive, but I think it should be good to just refresh the definition to set the ground of what I'm going to present. And then I will also present very briefly some evidence collected by Abstraction Group on the distinct role of abstractness and specificity in conceptual processing. But then I will go back to the idea of language as a socially shared tool, presenting more in detail some lab-based experiment on the impact of abstractness and specificity in dialogue production and dialogue comprehension. So in doing so, I hope to show you and convince you about the relevance of study this two dimension in conversation and the opposite. So the importance for conversational study to include these two dimensions. Okay. So abstractness. Abstractness or concreteness is commonly defined as the degree of sensory accessibility of a word referent. So the extent to which a word can have a referent that can be touched, smelled, or see outside in the word. And abstract concept like freedom, it has commonly conceived in opposition to concrete concept. But as Anna said also this morning, many scholars working on linguistics and semantics have redefine this notion in more positive terms. So not just as in opposition to concrete, but as the quality of those concepts with low sensory and motor salience. And those meaning is primarily understood through language, emotional, and social input. And given this complex nature of abstract concept, they have labeled it as hard word. And there are many evidence showing that they are acquired later and they are processed slower and with minor accuracy than concrete concept. Specificity, on the other hand, define the degree of precision of a conceptual category. And here we are, of course, looking back at the work of Lenoir Roche, who defined categorical specificity as a relational property that establish hierarchical class inclusion relation between concepts and can be operationalized by looking at the word position in a lexical taxonomy. So the category of vehicle is at subordinate level, and it includes at its middle level the concept of bike. And in turn, the category of bike include, for example, member like electric bike at its subordinate level. So basic category like bike are quite specific and less inclusive because include just members that share many common features. So electric bike, mountain bike, they all have wheels, for example. Instead, the category of vehicles is more broad and more general because it includes many members that may share the similar function, so the transportation, but not necessarily the same features, perceptual feature in this case. Think about plane and both, for example. And it is well known that words at basic level has a special status. So they are acquired early and processed faster than both words at subordinate and superordinate level. So while there is a general agreement in conceiving these two dimensions as theoretically distinct, their relationship has been underexplored in empirical research, and there are different reasons. One is methodological. While we have many ratings, so many norms collected by on speaker judgment about the level of concreteness or abstractness of a word, the resource for quantifying specificity are still very scarce. There are different methods. I'm not going to go in detail on that, just to make the point. And this scarcity, this lack of resource is also due because specificity is in its nature a relational variable. So while from 1 to 5 we can somehow agree and say that bike it's very concrete and freedom is very abstract, to judge and quantify the specificity of a concept like bike, we should in any case compare it with another concept. In this case, bike is more specific than vehicles, and vehicles are more generic than bike. But there is another reason, which is more theoretical, and it is that these two dimensions are often conflicted with a common assumption that abstract concepts are also quite generic than concrete concepts, and concrete concepts are also quite specific than abstract concepts. But if we look at more closely at the intersection between these two variables, we see that, of course, there are concepts that are abstract and very, very generic, like art, religion, but there are also concepts like furniture that include tangible entities that are not details and not specific at all. As well as there are concepts that are quite specific and concrete, like picnic table, but also concepts like Hinduism or Cubism that are quite abstract, but also very specific. And in the last year, Marianna and colleagues, also Tommaso Caselli, use new method to quantify specificity and found just a positive but mild correlation with concreteness. And in another study, behavioral study, we found that concreteness and specificity explain a unique variance in lexical decision, if it's a word or non-words, and semantic decision task based on, it was the concept abstract or concrete. And we found a specificity effect. So not only concrete words are processed faster than abstract words, but also the more specific a word is, the faster it is processed. And this effect is independent of word concreteness. So there is no interaction, as you can see in both plots. In another study, we collect and analyze, actually we analyzed the semantic content of a large set of Italian words and found that both concrete and abstract category are distributed along a continuous scale from generic to specific. So not only concrete concept can vary in specificity, as you may have in mind the classical linear taxonomy in animal kingdom, but also abstract category. But some categories allow to build a long taxonomy, so they span in all continuums, like social events or social entities. They link either very generic concept like agreement or damage, but also very specific social entities like bankruptcy. Others are either skewed on the generic pole or on the specific pole. So mathematical relations, for example, are more general in this case, like phase or cause, and supernatural entity are abstract but quite specific. And we recently replicate a similar pattern in a longitudinal study with young students. We asked them to build, actually really build word ladders, adding words on top and below an initial prompt. So they have to link the word based on a semantic relation is a. And this is also the idea of the word ladders app that we developed together in our project. But this was a paper version. We went in the classroom, so we didn't use the app, just we collect the data on paper. But we let them play with the app, of course. And so to give you an example, the word was, I don't know, dog, and then above they have to add increasingly generic word like dog is a type of mammal, mamma is a type of animal, animal is a type of living beings, etc. And below a specific type of dog. And the key finding here is that abstraction skills, so this ability to build word ladders, improves over time and regardless of age, and apply to both concrete and abstract concept. But the ladder that students build on starting from abstract words like mind or time in our sample leads to the shorter taxonomy, as you can see in the plot. And also include many other semantic relationships, especially free association. So there was more noise, we call it as a noise. So all this study I presented so far point to a different rule of specificity and concreteness / abstractness. It's very hard to disentangle this, okay? And in language production and language acquisition, but they are still focuses on single decontextualized word, even in this case, which was more interactive and gamified, but still isolated word. So if we took as our starting point, the idea that language is at its core social activity, we need to adapt or to shift a bit or adapt the approach that we use to study it. And indeed, many scholars have recently called for a methodological shift, so to start to study language and concept in interaction. So to the call is to create and design more interactive paradigm to investigate the real dynamics that is involved when we actually use words in conversation. And we can tell us why it's so important to study, for example, abstractness in interactive setting. And as Anna Borghi showed us this morning, this can be very particularly beneficial for abstractness. Why? First of all, because they abstract concepts have no single bounded reference in the real world. They acquisition really more on what other people say during our development. And even once acquired, people feel less confident about the meaning of abstract concepts. They are more really to defer on other people, the social metacognition dimension. So we defer on others. And it has been proposed that abstract concepts are more vague and open to negotiation. So during dialogue, speaker might reach more easily a shared common knowledge when talking about concrete topics or concrete concept by simply pointing to a reference or recalling it. Instead, with abstract concept, we might need more mutual monitoring to arrive at the same or similar representation. At the same time, studying specificity in interaction can also open new window into understand better how language shift and change depending on context. As a matter of fact, also a successful conversation, it's important to choose the right words. So if we are in a context like this, in a conference, we might use more specific terminology, assuming a kind of sharing a bit of common knowledge in the audience. Instead, if we are talking about the same topic, but in a public outreaching event, we might simplify our language and use more general terms. Well, find this balance is not always an easy task, and also because words that vary in specificity comes with different properties and communicative function. For example, generic concepts, as I said before, are acquired later and they have low dimensionality. Their members are less similar to each other. So when we are talking about in animals, for example, we need to produce more abstraction from the immediate context. And indeed, in a computational study, we Julia and Marianna found that generic categories, both abstract and concrete, are loosely associated with a wide range of contexts. In contrast, specific concepts are very less frequent in our daily language, and they come specifically in very narrow context and depends more on the expert of the speakers, but also of the expectation of the interlocutors. So all these factors together may also have an impact in the clarity, the informativeness, but also the engagement of a conversation, also to change a bit of, to flow in the conversation and not to have just one vocabulary, no? So the big question for me is, do abstractness, word abstractness and word specificity affect conversational dynamics? And so in the second part of the talk, I'm going to present 3 studies I have conducted during the postdoc and PhD. In the first study, we look at how abstract and concrete concepts are used in simulated conversation. And so we look at what type of dialogue is produced by speakers when abstract or concrete concepts are involved. In a second study, we look at more in detail whether abstract concepts are associated with specific linguistic construct in dialogue, and whether this in turn affect the perception of the dialogue itself. And then in the third study, we introduce the variable of specificity and see whether it influences the dynamics. So the first study was conducted online. It was during COVID time. and it was a linguistic production study. So basically, participants were asked to be to be involved in a real chat. So they saw a target sentence that could be either concrete, like I bought strawberries and I solved an enigma, and they reply. They simply write the reply. And we have different type of concrete and abstract concept, and we coded all the response and look at the frequency of those response as a function of the sentences. And here is the what we found. We found that abstract sentences, especially those that include more abstract concepts that were considered as more abstract, elicit more uncertainty expression or injunctions like or what do you mean, I'm not sure, but also expression that prompt the continuation of the conversation, so more conversational turn, even though it was just one dialogue. I mean, two turns, no one turns. It was a simulated conversation, so it was not an actual dialogue. Yeah, but they produce expression like "tell me more" that imply the willingness to continue the conversation. And they also produce more why and who question, and few questions related to physical aspect of the situation, like where and when. And we recently replicate this finding using a more controlled paradigm. And the goal here was to see whether abstract concepts are linked to specific construct, and whether, if it's so, if this affect behavioral related measure. So we designed 3 experiments, each one targeting a specific aspect of the relationship between abstractness and uncertainty. The first experiment, we tackled the dimension of uncertainty with the idea that with abstract concept, we'd feel less confident and we didn't need more others. The second experiment, we look at the dimension of curiosity, based on the idea that abstract concept foster social validation and social interaction. And the third experiment, we look at the 2 types of question that are the one more related to internal and causal mechanism, and one more related to physical and spatial temporal aspect. The study was pre-registered, and here are our prediction. We predict that when participants have to judge the plausibility of very short linguistic exchange, expression signaling uncertainty and expression signaling curiosity, and question related to agency and causality will be judged as more plausible when associated with abstract concept than with concrete concept. So here is an illustration of the design. Each experiment was composed by 2 sessions. The first, I will just focus on the first one, the plausibility judgment task, in which participants saw a sentence and a follow-up pairing on the screen, and they have to decide if it will plausibly occur or not in a real conversation. And we collect reaction time and frequency of the response. We try to make our experiment as much as ecological as possible. So we took the stimuli from the previous linguistic production study, and validate them in other norming study. So we end up with 42 sentences, half abstract and half concrete, that sounds very natural and not differ in familiarity. And to generate the follow-up, so the expression, we select those that have the higher and the lower score in the variable of interest. And there were also responses that people actually produced in the previous study. So in experiment 1, we have expression like, I did not understand, what you mean, that signal uncertainty, and expression like, good job, you did well, that's signaling that the sentence has been understood. The second experiment, we have expression signaling the willingness to continue the conversation out of curiosity, and expression that's at the opposite wants to close the conversation. And in experiment 3, we have the 2 types of questions. So to give you an idea, in experiment 1, for example, participants saw, the sentence, I made a cake, and then the follow-up expression, good job, appear on the screen. And they have to simply, it's very simple, but it are the designs that allow us to test this prediction, that we were interested in. And of course, then the same sentences was paired with uncertainty follow-up. So I made a cake. What do you mean? And then the same combination were done with abstract concept. No? So now I'm going to show the results. There are a lot of plots. Sorry for that. I will try to keep it short and simple, and I hope clear. As I said, I will focus just on session 1. So the frequency of plausibility judgment and reaction time that we analyze separately for plausible and implausible answer. And here the results of the first study. Well, as you can see in the plot, overall, overall, certainty follow-up were judged as more plausible than uncertainty follow-up overall for both type of sentence, okay? But as expected, uncertainty follow-up expression like, what do you mean? I don't understand, were more plausible when target sentences were abstract compared to when they were concrete. And data on reaction time consistently show that participants were also slower to judge as implausible abstract uncertainty pairing than concrete uncertainty pairing. In experiment 2, the one based on curiosity, we found a very clear interaction in line with our hypothesis. We found that curiosity follow-up are more plausible when matched with abstract sentences than with concrete sentences, and the opposite was true in case of pairing, featuring, and follow-up. Data on reaction time partially aligned with our prediction. They show that abstract curiosity pairing were judged as plausible faster than concrete curiosity pairing, and participants were also slower to judge curiosity follow-up as implausible when associated with abstract sentences, but the same was true with and follow-up. So it's a bit less straightforward. In experiment 3, we, contrary to our prediction, we didn't find differences within causal question. Indeed, spatiotemporal follow-up were judged as more plausible with both type of sentences and particularly with concrete one. And they were also require more time to be judged as implausible when matched with concrete sentences than abstract sentences. So to wrap up all this plot, this study partially replicate the previous linguistic production study with a new and novel control paradigm and collect also behavioral measure. And experiment 1 and experiment 2 fully confirm our hypothesis. When abstract concepts are embedded in simulated linguistic exchange, they are consistently associated with expression of uncertainty and expression of curiosity. Instead, experiment 3 seems to suggest that causality is equally important for both types of sentences, or is particularly unlikely for both types of sentences, at least the one that we use in this experiment. But we confirm that spatiotemporal aspects are important for concrete sentences. And so just to draw some in conclusion, this study has several implications. One is that we replicate, and these results are in line with theories based on single word study, linking the processing of abstract concept with inner monitoring processing and social interaction. But this study is also maybe also relevant for literature on dialogue, showing that when conversations are more abstract, people put more effort to reach an alignment and need more others to co-construct the meaning. And this effort is seen with the association with uncertainty expression and curiosity expression on the other hand. This study can be also relevant for literature on interactive repairs presented before by Marx. Even though we didn't target specifically this aspect in our study, it seems that we found a preference for agreement response. So maybe with the idea that in people and create a representation that is good enough for the task at the end, so they don't go much more in details to ask clarification. But despite this, with abstract concept, they are more associated with open-ended requests. So tell me more, what do you mean, no? To repeat. And I think this link is very interesting also to explore in other experiments or in natural conversation dataset. But what we did after this is to look at specificity. So we replicate the same experiment, just manipulating the level of the hierarchical level of abstract and concrete concept. The study is still in preparation, and we focus just on 2 experiments. And here are our predictions. So when participants have to judge, in this case, a dialogue, short dialogue, that the expression that's signaling uncertainty and expression of curiosity should be more plausible when associated with generic sentences than specific one. That's why one reason is that generic category are more broad and so include many members, and also the referentiality in this case is less straightforward, no? So it's more open to interpretation. And as I said, the design is exactly the same. What we change here are the material. So for each abstract and concrete sentences, we create the generic version and specific version. So for example, for the sentence, I made a cake, we create the generic one, I made a dessert, and I made a tar. And we did the same for abstract sentences using WordNet, our encyclopedic knowledge, and we kept only the sentences that sound naturalness and that for which the pair generic and specific were actually recognized by another sample of participant. So we try to validate also this stimuli. And as before, the sentence appear on the screen, then the follow-up, and then the other combination. Yeah, I will skip the results on reaction time instead, because we didn't find a meaningful pattern. But we analyzed the plausibility judgment in 2 different ways. So when we look at a specificity alone, so just whether the sentence is generic or specific, in experiment 1 that target the uncertainty dimension, we didn't find any interaction with the type of follow-up, meaning that certainty expression were judged as more plausible than uncertainty expression for both types of sentences. But when we look at the intersection between these 2 variables, so we have the 4 types of sentences, we have an interaction. But as you can see in the plot, the effect is driven mainly by abstractness, because uncertainty follow-up were judged as more plausible when matched with abstract sentences than concrete sentences, but regardless of their level of specificity. And in experiment 2, we found instead that, again, curiosity follow-up are more plausible than those who indicating the willingness to close the conversation. But in line with our prediction, curiosity follow-up were more plausible when target sentences were generic compared to when they were specific. And more in detail, the curiosity follow-up are more plausible when target sentences are abstract, both generic and specific, and also when target sentences are generic and concrete, compared to when they are concrete and specific. So to sum up, this first experiment, replicate our previous finding and strengthen the results, showing that abstractness, even when they vary in level of specificity, is the main driving factor that brings then trigger uncertainty in dialogue comprehension. In experiment 2 bring us novel results showing that not only abstract words, sentences, sorry, but also generic, concrete sentences spark curiosity. So what does this study tell us? In short, it seems that when people talk about more specific or generic words, they can easily reach a common understanding, and because there is a more direct link with the category and the referent, and this reduces the feeling of uncertainty of word meaning. This is not the case when we are talking about some abstract concept for which that refer to multiple situations, and they open more vague, let's say. But however, also concrete language vary in clarity. So when speakers are talking about a concrete concept, but it's quite generic, like animals, they may instantiate in their mind different type of exemplar, and this variability may open a gap of interpretability that still require some clarification, at least in this design. So to conclude, I think the take-home message of my talk, but I think also of this workshop, is that abstractness and specificity are two distinct yet related variables, and recognize this can be crucial for future research, not only on theory of concept, but also research on dialogue. And what I have shown is that abstractness in dialogue production and comprehension trigger uncertainty and social validation, so prompting people to monitoring more their own knowledge. They feel insecure, and also social validation, so ask really on other people, or at least continue the conversation, keep more turn with them to understand the meaning. Specificity, on the other hand, in dialogue comprehension seems so far more related on how much clarification a word needs in a conversation. Of course, this experiment I have presented are very constrained by very controlled lab setting, but here we try to not use single words, so we use concept in sentences and in naturally linguistic exchange. So I think it is a little step toward understanding how meaning is constructed in dialogue, what type of meaning speakers have in mind when they judge a dialogue. And I think the next step will be to analyze the interplay between these two variables, these semantics in general, in natural conversational data, and see how much they can affect the conversational dynamics. So the way we repair, maintain, build the common ground, and ideally involving different type of speakers, not only the social background, but also the type of relationship that they have. And looking ahead, I think the main goal will be to find a balance between this richness coming from ecological data, as Caterina showed before, from natural corpus, with experimental control to be sure to, isolate and test specific hypotheses of how semantic can impact real-time dialogue. And I think we will discuss on this in the roundtable. And that's it. I will thanks again the Abstraction group for today and all people who works with this. Thanks.
Thank you, Caterina. I see there is.
Yeah, thank you for this very elegant work and very, very rich. I was intrigued by the word letters. I wanted to learn more about them. So you had this nice plot where you showed the number of words in a valid taxonomy, right? And so I wondered, it seems to me a key question here is the level of the word that you start out with to begin with, right? And so I wanted to know how you selected those. I also would have liked to see actually those words plotted on the ladders, because it seems to me like depending on where you start, you can go only limit a couple steps upward or more, and downward likewise. So I was just interested in general in what those patterns look like.
Okay. That's a very nice question also, because allow me to talk about a little bit of the word ladders up, which is a game, and it's different. So the game is, and you can download it, all of you can download and play. I will talk about first the one that we use at school, and then say a few words on the app. So at school, we select basic level, concrete, emotional, social rule, and abstract concept, very frequent, that don't differ in frequency, so to keep it simple. But you are right. So depending on which is the word that you start, you have different steps. So you can go more on or just stop. No, if you start with picnic table, maybe you can just down. Maybe you can go down. Unless you know a specific type of picnic table. So we choose the basic level, very frequent, and unfortunately few words, because it was a public school, so we went 2 hours in each class, at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, and then we compare the letters. Yeah. And we started with the initial pool of words that you are doing that prompts to play. We started with the Brisbane database words, and there's a very many. And then we stumbled upon some ethical problems with the use of with publishing this app in the wild, so that anyone can download, including minors underage. We had to filter that word, that list, for words that might be sensitive or underage. So it's not the whole Brisbane. And some, So in that context, it could be possible that you start to play with a already very specific word or a very generic one, either abstract or concrete, because it's. And the number of steps in the digital platform, you can as many steps as you want above. And actually, even in the class, the children, they used to draw, to write outside the steps. So they can, if they want, they can go and write many things. Very funny.
So there is Caterina, then Riccardo, and we also have one question from online, just to keep.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting. I was trying to apply what you were saying to the data I observed. And I was thinking that whereas with generic concepts, it's clear that when they get exemplified, the examples are more specific than the starting point. With abstract concepts, I'm not so sure that examples are more concrete. Because if you have to talk about emotions, would you classify fear as more concrete than emotion? Exactly. So the point is, this is my point. So you have 2 dimensions, right, that you're opposing, basically abstractness, concreteness, genericity, and specificity. And you said that with abstract concepts, your results show that you need more negotiation, right? So I was wondering, that negotiation, what is it? How does it look like? Is it exemplification? And in that case, does it go towards specificity, or is it something else? So I was curious about this. Thank you.
Another explanation, which can be. I mean, we didn't test this, but another possibility is also not only that you want to negotiate because you don't understand the meaning, because also here in the first experiment we have very basic level concept, abstract concepts. Okay? So not very it's not the case that you are not understood meaning. So what you mean is not, I don't know, but can be also that people care more about to talk about abstract concept, and they are more engaged, no? And it's something that maybe was more clear on the data in the linguistic production data, when you can actually read all the conversation. It seems that is not just a negotiation about the referent, but I care to know what you think about it. I don't know if yeah. So it's.
Thank you. This was a really good talk. I'm gonna extrapolate some of the things you said to push a caricatured vision, because I'm trying to push you to elaborate on some points. And so you say that abstract and generic words, they take longer to process, and that they generate more uncertainty, and that need for social validation. So I could take that view and say, well, when I'm teaching students, then I should absolutely avoid using these kind of words. Eliminating vagueness is the best thing I could do. And well, the project is called Abstraction, so I'm sure you don't think that. But I would want you to sort of elaborate a bit more. So are they a necessary evil, or are they something that are actually very useful tools, and when? And can we use what you're finding to sort of elaborate a bit more of when should we go up the ladder, when should we go down the ladder? And I know it's a big question, but
Yeah,
it's just
it's not just one, it's a nested question. Okay, one is when is useful. I have to think about it because it's very big. I don't know, of course. I think your big question is why they are useful, if they are so cognitive loaded, processing them, why we use it. And maybe can be related to my answer of Caterina before, so because they are more socially related and we care more about it. And when we have to shift, I think depending on context and our interlocutor, and also the goal of the conversation. If we have to refine a concept, for example, it's good to be a bit generic and open, no, the discussion. Yeah, I think it's a matter to also have a balance between this in conversation. I kind of explore more the semantic space, no? I remember some words also from Christian about that you starting from a abstract framework of the same problem. It was a classical work about image, a planet, and the condition of this planet. If you frame this in a more abstract way, you end up with a situation or an outcome that is very, very different from the one that exists. So it can be useful when you have to explore. Yes, exactly. Doubt. Yes, it's true.
Okay, I will read. It works.
Okay, I think we should go. Go.
I will just read the last question from online. So it's interesting that the kinds of words that Mark talked about, interjections, have very abstract meanings. Yet they are acquired very early and they do not trigger the kind of uncertainty you talk about. So the effects of abstraction you talk about here are restricted to abstraction in lexical words. So it's not a problem of abstract meaning per se. I wonder if you have thought about this in the project.
I'm not sure I have really understood the question. Okay. I mean, I think the kind of word that Marx talk about are in the interjection, but I don't think all of them trigger uncertainty or trigger. They have different function, no? Maybe you wanna add, yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. No, I mean, like Mark also pointed out that the kinds of meanings that we express with interjections fall under the umbrella term of abstract. So they encode abstract meanings. but their abstraction is very different in nature of the abstract meanings you talk about that pertain to lexical words. So I wonder whether you've thought about the difference between abstract meanings in interactional language, in interjections, versus abstract meaning in lexical words. Because it can't be a problem of abstract meaning per se. Kids acquire interjections very early, as Mark has shown. And so abstract meaning is not a problem. It's just a problem when abstract meaning is encoded in lexical words.
Well, in my talk, okay, now I get it, the question. In my talk, at least I was talking about the lexical meaning, so the meaning of the words. Okay,
Yes.
that's where the uncertainty came from.
Right.
About the interjection, I think they are different, and not all of them trigger uncertainty. And
but yeah. That's the interesting thing. Why don't they trigger uncertainty? Because their meaning is also very abstract.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but okay, they are not real words. I mean, they not conventionalized meaning as you can find in a dictionary, for example. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you learn the way you have to use it during the conversation. So you learn that after someone repeat what they were saying. So, but in this sense, they are abstracting a meta rule of the conversation, not of the meaning of the word. I'm not sure if, yeah, this is the meta rule of the conversation.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank everyone.